there's never an excuse. No matter how much trauma a man has, there is never an excuse to lay hands and hurt a woman, physically or emotionally.
Good afternoon, everyone, and happy Friday, January 19th, 2026. I have all your news for your rush hour ride home. Can you believe we've made it to the end of this intense week? We have a lot of updates to cover. First, the ongoing Blake Lively versus Justin Baldoni story continues to unfold with conflicting information. Baldoni has essentially called director Claire Obey a liar, and I'll explain exactly why. Next, we turn to a major cultural moment. Conservative podcaster Sean Ryan and podcasting icon Joe Rogan are publicly questioning by extension, the Trump administration, over their handling of ongoing riots. Meanwhile, Elon Musk is calling for the Insurrection Act, a move that appears to be part of a larger strategy. I'll break down what this could mean, not to incite fear but to outline the potential plans and implications, highlighting the increasingly authoritarian undertones in these developments. On a lighter note, if you haven't joined the conversation on Instagram yet, now's the time. We're closing in on 100,000 followers, just 6,700 away on. I truly appreciate all the support during this incredible growth period. Turning back to entertainment news, the story sweeping the nation involves Claire Obey allegedly lying about Baldoni being banned from the Empire Waste set. The details are as follows. Wayfair initially provided Obey with a $2 million budget, with additional financing arranged later. Wayfair then required her to reduce her equity since new investors were involved as standard practice in film financing. Baldoni objected, and Claire allegedly claimed he was being verbally abusive. This highlights how crucial it is for Baldoni to document interactions in the industry, given how easily situations can be misrepresented. In deposition, Baldoni was asked if he had ever been accused of harassment, to which he replied that, to his knowledge, he never had. This contrasts sharply with the narrative presented in recent media coverage, which made it seem as though Baldoni had a history of such accusations. Unlike other cases involving multiple accusers, the allegations in this situation appear to originate primarily from Blake Lively, making it difficult to separate fact from manipulation. Adding to the complexity, Lively's claims include threats to leave her agency, a move that could cost the agency hundreds of millions in long-term revenue, demonstrating the high stakes involved in this dispute. Of the comic book movies and related projects, illustrate just how much money is at stake and the financial pressure for people to align themselves with Blake Lively's interests. Regarding Empire Waste, Claire Obey's project, Baldoni testified that he played a significant creative role. He helped with casting, connected Obey with the film's main song, gave notes during editing, and even suggested a TikTok campaign to find the lead actress. He visited the set, offered guidance, and supported Obey throughout the process. While not equivalent to a full-time producer on the ground, he explained that this was simply part of the contributions he typically makes in projects he's involved with. When asked if Obey ever accused him of misconduct, Baldoni stated unequivocally that she had not, and he had never heard from anyone that Obey had concerns about his behavior on set. He acknowledged awareness of a declaration Obey had filed alleging he was verbally abusive, but he found such accusations hard to reconcile with the facts. According to him, the only contentious exchanges involved financial discussions, telling someone that the project was significantly over budget, not anything that could reasonably be considered verbal abuse. Baldoni emphasized that while abusive behavior exists in some professional environments, there was no evidence of inappropriate behavior toward Obey beyond the standard pressures of managing a production. The declaration Obey filed stated that she experienced repeated negative interactions with Baldoni, including verbal abuse, and requested that he not be permitted on set for the majority of production. Baldoni explained that she later clarified she wanted him excluded primarily from promotional activities, due to issues involving Blake Lively, and there was no documented evidence, such as emails, to support her broader claims. When asked directly if he verbally abused Obey at any time, Baldoni responded, "God no." When pressed on whether her declaration was a lie, he carefully stated that he did not want to call her a liar, emphasizing his desire to remain respectful while asserting that he did not engage in abusive behavior. According to his testimony, he maintained a positive relationship with Obey, was regularly invited to the set, and was never asked to leave. While it's theoretically possible that someone could lie under oath, Baldoni's account paints a picture of false or exaggerated accusations and demonstrates a measured, compassionate response in the face of serious allegations. He continues to refuse to outright call her a liar while clearly stating that her interpretation of events is false. Misunderstandings happen all the time, especially in high-pressure environments. People misread tone, intent, or blunt communication, particularly during business negotiations. If Baldoni was being direct and firm about renegotiating terms because a project was massively over budget, that may have felt harsh, but that is also the reality of business. Tough conversations are sometimes unavoidable, and clarity does not automatically equal abuse. What makes this especially interesting is how this entertainment story intersects with a much larger cultural moment. In pop culture and media, Figures like Joe Rogan, regardless of whether people agree with his politics, are openly questioning what is happening in the country. Footage circulating online shows ICE using so-called non-lethal weapons at close range, leaving at least one individual permanently blind. These are taxpayer-funded actions, and polling shows that many Americans strongly oppose this kind of enforcement, viewing it as destructive to the social fabric. It is deeply disturbing to watch a US citizen, including women, being shot in the face under these circumstances. While some defend these actions as justified, most people can clearly see what is happening with their own eyes. Yet public officials continue to gaslight the public. J.D. Vance's remarks, dismissing public concern, only add fuel to the fire, minimizing what viewers plainly saw. The backlash to those comments has been intense, with many calling out the hypocrisy and political opportunism behind them. Adding to the controversy, details emerged showing that the officer involved was able to walk away, to drive himself home, and physically relocate belongings shortly after the incident, casting serious doubt on claims of severe injury. Medical experts even noted that internal bleeding can mean something as minor as a bruise. Despite this, footage was released as supposed proof of wrongdoing, yet it only raised more questions. At the same time, political leaders and influencers continue to escalate rhetoric online. Social media platforms have become breeding grounds for misinformation, and Elon Musk's call to invoke the Insurrection Act has intensified fears. Many believe this has been the strategy all along: provoke confrontation, inflame communities, frame the response as chaos, then justify extreme federal action, deploy ICE aggressively, spark unrest, label it an insurrection, centralize power, and erode democratic norms. At this point, it is difficult to deny what appears to be unfolding in real time. The pattern is clear, the tactics are familiar, and the consequences could be profound. If you enjoy this content, follow me on Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok. I'm Dan Niels on all platforms. We share updates and clips there regularly. Today, I have a very interesting interview for you. Our guest is a firefighter who has historically avoided politics but is now running for office. Everyone admires firefighters. They're willing to run into burning buildings. And now this individual is stepping up to serve in government. Before we dive in, a quick word from today's sponsor, Wix. Every business and brand needs a website, and Wix makes it easy to create one, even with zero design experience. Their AI website builder lets you create a professional, ready-to-use site in minutes by simply answering a few questions. Or you can choose from over 2,000 templates. Wix has been powering businesses for over 20 years and helps people create sites that reflect their individuality while scaling effectively. Sign up for free at wix.com. Our guest today is Harry J1, a volunteer firefighter running for Congress in Maryland's 5th District. Harry, thanks for joining us. How are you? I'm doing great, Dave. Excited to be here, he responds. It's been a wild start to the year, and I'm also expecting a child soon. So this year will be very exciting for my family. Congratulations. Congratulations. I have a 20-month-old myself, and you realize quickly how much parenthood changes things. Kids have a way of accelerating life lessons, like how hair turns gray. Harry's background as a firefighter is remarkable because it's apolitical and universally respected. Firefighters aren't part of cultural divides, they simply help people. Beyond that, he's now stepping into politics. Harry explains his motivation. I've been a volunteer firefighter for about 12 years. My firehouse has always had a mix of Democrats and Republicans, with many from Irish or Union families, historically Democratic constituencies. Over time, I've noticed a significant shift among rank-and-file firefighters toward more conservative positions, even as national union leadership, like the IA, endorsed Biden. This demonstrates a real disconnect between national leadership and working-class constituents. Additionally, being a firefighter exposes you to the struggles of everyday Americans. Many people with manageable medical conditions rely on 911 as a taxi and the emergency room as their primary care. It's a stark illustration of how broken our healthcare system is. Having spent time in Australia, where they have a universal healthcare system called Medicare, I see clearly that solutions already exist in other developed countries. The US simply needs to focus on improving people's lives, especially working-class citizens. That's where the Democratic Party has lost focus over the past decade. My husband, who was finance director at the DNC and worked on the Biden campaign, also sees the same disconnect in priorities. Harry explains that his motivation to get involved in politics comes from first-hand experience observing how the Democratic Party operates. I've seen how the party works from the inside, he says, and the conversations at my firehouse are very different from what happens at the parties in Washington, D.C., just 45 minutes away. It's no mystery why the Democratic Party has lost so many voters, and that's a big part of why I decided to step up. He emphasizes that criticizing the party is not about undermining it, but about making it better. People often think you can't critique the Democratic Party without losing votes, but true authenticity comes from calling out corruption, insider trading, foreign influence, and other missteps. Exposing the bad apples allows those with bold, good ideas to rise, which ultimately strengthens the party. When asked about running in a traditionally safe Democratic seat versus trying to flip a competitive district, Harry explains that the recent announcement that Steny Hoyer will not seek re-election creates an open seat in Maryland's 5th district. "I didn't wait for party elites to give me the green light," he says. Institutional politics has failed people over the past decade. Even with Donald Trump unpopular, the Democratic Party has been viewed as more out of touch. For the past 10 years, Democrats have focused on being anti-Trump rather than articulating a clear vision for the future or improving people's lives. Voters know what Trump stands for, but the average voter couldn't clearly explain what Democrats stand for in 2024. That's a simple problem to solve, and I'm stepping up to address it. He acknowledges that while safe seats are common about 90% of U.S. House districts, today are safe due to gerrymandering. The representatives elected to those seats still shape the party's national reputation. The way voters in Iowa, Texas, or other swing states perceive the Democratic Party is influenced by representatives from safer districts, he notes. Just as high-profile Republicans like Lauren Boebert and Marjorie Taylor Greene define the perception of their party, Democrats need representatives who reflect positive values and leadership. My goal isn't just to legislate locally, but to help redefine what the Democratic Party stands for and how it is perceived nationwide. Finally, Harry touches on practical policy priorities, emphasizing that the country has the resources to fund programs like universal healthcare. "We have the money for healthcare if we choose to allocate it wisely. Instead, billions are spent on initiatives like drilling rigs and Venezuela funds that could easily cover a decade of universal healthcare. The resources exist. It's a matter of political will and prioritizing the right solutions." When asked how to communicate these ideas and get more officials like him into office, Harry emphasizes redirecting resources so taxpayers benefit Americans first. "People want an America First approach," he says. "And I'm all for co-opting that slogan. Let's actually activate it in a meaningful way." He cautions against relying solely on American historical comparisons when assessing figures like Donald Trump, noting that while people often compare him to Andrew Jackson or Richard Nixon, a more accurate parallel is Vladimir Putin. "We're in uncharted territory," he explains. "And many Americans aren't prepared for what's coming because we only look to our own history for precedent." Harry highlights how voters can be persuaded to act against their own self. Republicans have perfected this for decades, he notes. With social media amplifying the most emotionally charged stories, it's easier than ever to manipulate millions of voters. For instance, spending billions of U.S. tax dollars to restart crude production in Venezuela benefits well-connected campaign donors. Not everyday Americans, but many voters still support these policies. He adds that the Republican strategy combines nationalistic rhetoric, coded messaging, and sometimes extreme symbols or slogans, and points out that Democrats are not adequately prepared to counter this. Figures like Steny Hoyer and Chuck Schumer entered Congress when the Republican Party still functioned as a normal political party. Today's leadership often treats Republicans as a standard opposition, but we're facing something far more extreme. Harry's motivation is also deeply personal. "My grandparents were Holocaust survivors who spent years in refugee camps before coming to America." He shares, "From a young age I thought about how I would respond to a fascist movement rising around me. That awareness drives me to take action now." The current Democratic leadership doesn't fully grasp the stakes. They still treat the Republican Party as if it's a normal political debate about taxes, when the reality is far more serious. When discussing the need for fighters in politics, Harry observes that many Trump voters support him not out of genuine enthusiasm but because they see no one actively advocating for their interests. Trump and the Republicans are effective because they act quickly, signing legislation and making moves that trigger immediate results, he explains. If a progressive blue wave takes office, the challenge for Democrats is to demonstrate tangible results, immediately show voters that change is happening from day one. With clear policies, repeals, and reforms, this immediate action is essential to gain trust and momentum while countering a politically aggressive opposition. Finally, he warns that a retaken House in 2026, assuming a free and fair election, could create an even more precarious situation for Trump. Suddenly, he has a foil, he says. The implication is that effective, decisive Democratic leadership is crucial not just for governance, but for preserving democratic norms and countering extreme political tactics. Harry notes that the current situation in government is unprecedented. Right now, he controls essentially all three branches of government. Congress has been marginalized, and on paper, the Republicans hold the majority. The Supreme Court rubber stamps almost everything he wants. There's no one to blame. And that's why the real danger may actually come when Democrats retake the House. We'll have a conversation about that later. He outlines the first actions he believes should be taken: impeachment of Donald Trump. Trump and other officials who have abused their power and undermined the Constitution. No funding bills should proceed until this imbalance between the branches of government is addressed. This concentration of power is tearing our country apart, he emphasizes. Harry points to his own decision to challenge 86-year-old Congressman Steny Hoyer as part of this larger concern. Hoyer's long tenure has coincided with a slow but inexorable decline in Congress as an institution. When he entered office in 1981, Congress was near its peak of power relative to the executive branch, especially in the late 20th century. Since then, authority has gradually been ceded to the executive, and tough decisions on social issues have been passed to the courts, politicizing the judicial system. Donald Trump is a symptom of this decay, not the root cause. Over the past 40 years, Congress has effectively given away its authority, leaving the country vulnerable to a president without principles or scruples. The result is a situation where we now have someone ruling by decree, while Congress functions as a rubber stamp body, similar to the Russian Duma in a tin-pot dictatorship. He also comments on why voters have been drawn to figures like Trump. People want immediate results, a dopamine hit from seeing action. Congress hasn't delivered that in decades. Citizens grew tired of watching old leaders like Steny Hoyer or Hal Rogers give speeches to an empty room on C-SPAN. They were fed up with endless hearings, back-and-forth debates, and a body that wasn't even writing its own legislation. Most bills come straight from the West Wing or lobbyists and are emailed to Congress. For example, when the ACA passed, Hoyer helped eliminate the public option in 2009, and critics noted that most members hadn't even read the 4,000-page bill. The real authors were likely health insurance lobbyists. People got sick of Congress being so beholden to special interests and failing to perform its basic duties, and that frustration helped fuel the rise of outsiders promising action. Harry points out how voters sometimes preferred a strong, decisive leader to the slow, messy system of checks and balances in liberal democracy. We elected someone who essentially ruled by decree, and in the age of social media, people felt it was more transparent to know exactly what he's thinking. He posts it at 3 in the morning. He says, without a political foil, Trump has a limited number of targets to blame. First the pandemic, then so-called woke judges, and the Iran. Harry warns that unchecked, this type of manipulation could escalate even further, exploiting fear and prejudice to maintain support. He praises those stepping up to address problems from within, instead of merely blaming others. It's incredible to see people like firefighters, teachers, and union members actively engaging to improve the system, he says. When asked which is harder, running for Congress or putting out a house fire, Harry laughs. Definitely putting out a house fire. I know exactly how to do that. Running for Congress, I'm still figuring it out. For those who want to support his campaign, Harry directs them to his website, harryjarnmd5.com, where they can find links to social media, donation portals, volunteer signups, and email lists. If you're in Maryland or DC, we'd love to have you helping out on the ground, he adds. Dave closes the segment by thanking viewers. That's it for this week. Check back for extra content over the weekend, and make sure you're subscribed with alerts on. Follow us across all platforms and join our mailing list at rushhourwithdave.com. It's been an exhausting week with a lot of important stories, and I appreciate all the hundreds of thousands of new viewers who've joined us. It's humbling to know that we can help you stay informed. Have a fantastic weekend, be kind, and we'll see you Monday or sooner if we release extra content. I'm Dave, and this is The Rush.